Our next speaker is the Foreign Secretary's Special Representative for Climate Change. Please welcome Mr. Nick Bridge.
Hello, everybody. I hope we've got better connectivity this time. Thank you so much, Chair of the Climate Council, Minister, and all of you watching, and my colleagues at the very energetic British Embassy in Reykjavik for this opportunity. The Minister set out very clearly, we have a really clear scientific need to move faster and on a global scale to avert a climate and an environmental breakdown. In fact, we may already be in some tipping point scenarios. We may already have activated some Earth systems in ways that we can't control. So the urgency is very clear and very alarming. But the change from 5 years ago, when we joined the Paris Agreement, which was largely a political agreement to do what we need to do to tackle climate change, the change since then to today is very striking in the area of our economy and our society. Because as we heard in the Icelandic example, we now know that it just makes economic sense and social sense and environmental sense to move to tackle climate change at the same time as rebuilding our economies from the terrible effect of the COVID crisis. So this puts a heavy weight on the United Kingdom's shoulders as we look to preside over COP26 next year in partnership with Italy, delayed by 1 year due to the COVID crisis. But in some ways, we say never waste a crisis. We've seen this very significant news in recent days from the United States, the recommitment to come back into the Paris Agreement on day one under President-elect Biden's administration, and to really put green, clean, resilient recovery at the heart of that US agenda. That's very, very significant for emissions, but also for our diplomacy around the world. But it's not just that. Around a month ago, we heard from China, where President Xi Jinping announced that China will reach net zero carbon neutrality by around 2060, before 2060, and peak the emissions of the economy before 2030. And soon after that Chinese announcement, we heard from Japan, the new Prime Minister Suga, and then from President Moon in Korea, that they too would commit to net zero by 2050, net zero emissions. So we can see that politically, diplomatically, momentum is building. The realization is there that we have to act more quickly, but we have to make the case to our citizens that it's in their interests for us to move more quickly. And that is very much the case economically. So many more jobs in renewable energy than in fossil fuel, many more jobs in clean and green technologies that can be spread right across the economy and not just concentrated in one or two places. So we have a very clear diplomatic challenge. And as the UK presidency, we're focusing in a number of areas. So at COP26, we want to show, firstly, above all, that the Paris Agreement is working. All countries are committed. There are some serious negotiations still to be done to make sure the Paris Agreement is operating in respect of markets under something called Article 6. And in terms of showing the poorest and most vulnerable countries that we are committed to financing this transition and supporting everybody to get there. So there are some really important negotiating conclusions that we must achieve. We must show that since the Paris Agreement, we have taken a huge step, all of us, to enhance our ambition. And we heard the great commitment from the minister in Iceland's determination to enhance its commitments to the agreement. We'll do this in a number of ways, but basically overall by showing that the economy is changing anyway, that businesses want to move faster. So if we look where the emissions are in the economy, they're in energy, they're in transport, and they're in our land use, and they're in our infrastructure and our industry. And we need to underpin all of action in those areas with a transformation in where we put our climate finance and our whole financial system, not just our support to developing countries to mitigate and adapt to climate change, but our entire financial system has to shift to sustainable investments within a decade or so. So what we'll try to do is have two tracks. On the one track, we talk to all countries, all partners to be more ambitious politically, to act together. But at the same time, we're showing that in the economy, this change is happening anyway. And it's the right thing to do for our citizens, for our jobs, for our young people, and for our environment. One example from the UK in the way that we're going about this. Last year, we locked in a legislation to go to net zero. And we'll hear soon from my colleague from the Committee on Climate Change in the UK, which is the UK's independent body that helps drive forward this level of ambition. And we showed that actually we've already taken great steps in energy. The UK not that long ago had 40% coal in our energy generation mix. And this went very quickly in around 5 years to, on most days, zero. That's a huge and rapid shift out of coal, which we've relied upon as the first country to industrialize for centuries. And how did we do that? We had a regulatory structure, we had a business community, and we had a commitment from government and business in partnership to shift the energy system. And we've become the biggest producer of offshore wind in just a few years in the world, because the price has more than halved, way more than halved in just 5 years, because we've gone to scale in this clean energy system. It's so successful. If I could be rather undiplomatic, we even have an industry in offshore wind socks. That's how popular the offshore wind revolution is in the UK. So the energy system is moving. Next, transport, and then decarbonizing the industrial sector. We know we can do this. We have to do this. So the UK is trying to lead by example. Shortly, the Prime Minister will make a new set of announcements around our commitments ahead of COP26, domestically and internationally. And we want all countries to do the same. So we look to Iceland to take the Climate Action Plan of 2020 and the carbon neutrality bill that you are scheduling for next year, and to see whether you can really, as the Minister said, make sure actions speak louder than words, and really lock in and write down and commit so that business has the certainty that this is the direction of travel. And it's very encouraging to see that commitment from the Minister. And the United Kingdom just wants to be the best possible partner and friend and ally in investing in that future with Iceland. So we need both diplomatic conversations and political conversations about what we both need to do and what we can do together as part of European family and globally. And then we need business and investment conversations to ensure that the finance flows into the right places. So I think that's what we need to do. Europe must, as it always does on this agenda, must lead. Iceland and the UK can be part of that leadership. But with the developments in the United States, in China and elsewhere, I really feel that although we have a huge way to go to close the gap and avoid a climate catastrophe, we're beginning to see the concrete signs of action. So I'll stop there and look forward to engaging in a panel discussion and having feedback and questions from all of you. And thanks again from the UK to all the organisers for this opportunity for us to come together and get a positive sense of shared mission going forward. Thank you.